Well, I found my way to the Nymex in a roundabout way through Chicago, through the CME. I actually started out, Jimmy Kalenis was my first boss. He put me in as a runner with Thompson McKinnon right out of college. I was working for a guy named Mike Jennings and Dave Powers, which is a whole story in itself. Clerked there for about a year. My father was a COMEX silver trader and also on the board of the exchange, and then ended up becoming chairman of COMEX and owned the clearinghouse. So it was a natural fit for me to go from Chicago to New York, and I spent 3 years a couple years as a clerk in Chicago as a runner, making $3.75 an hour right out of college. Then I clerked in New York for a little while, traded gold for about 2 years. And then once the Gulf War hit, I pleaded to go over, to Nymex, because my father and I always had this ongoing joke that, he was a COMEX guy. He bled green because the badges were green and the Nymex badges were yellow. And he was like, no, COMEX is the place. And I'm like, no, Nymex is the place, because if you went to Long Island and you got everybody's jewelry and you melted it down, you'd go through all the gas. So you'd have the same amount of jewelry and gold, but you wouldn't have the gas. So basically, I forced my way, by asking and asking and asking. And once I went to Nymex, I never went back. I never went back to COMEX, except for one day I traded in 20 years. Went to school up at, my education was, I went to school at Syracuse University, did communications, economics, a little bit of everything. Major entrepreneur in Syracuse. I started my own business. I had a t-shirt company. I did every bar on campus, every fraternity on campus, and I was basically playing the arb. Little did I know what I was doing back then, between the cost of the t-shirts, getting them done, and selling them to the bars and everything else. And then, I clerked on COMEX, a couple of summers, but I knew that I wanted to go into commodities, for a very long time, simply, from my father's background and hearing about Silver Thursday and the Hunt brothers and everything else. So that captured my attention, very, very early. Well, I was in a lucky position, being president, I worked my way up. I ended up being president of the clearinghouse. So Sterling, which was, the family company, and my father started it and grew it on COMEX. As a clearinghouse, you had to have seats on every exchange. So I ended up being a member of all 4 exchanges. They used to have this gold badge, which I never wore. I felt since I didn't buy the 4 memberships, I didn't deserve a gold badge. So I was the first one that made a 4-color badge, actually. So I stepped into those, and then I ended up taking one of the Nymex seats. But I had all the seats, for all my years there, so I could float around the floor. And originally, when I was on the floor, all the exchanges were on the same trading floor in 4 World Trade Center. It's funny. I keep saying how much I miss it every day, and I do. And, when you meet other traders, it's kind of like we're the Walking Dead. There's something missing about not being on the trading floor. However, with that being said, I think that if I was still on the trading floor, I might be dead. Just the fact that I had 2 shoulder surgeries from being crushed, from my shoulder being shoved into my socket for all those years. I had, back problems, knee problems, headaches, whatever. People didn't realize outside the business listen, it was exciting. It was awesome. It was like going to the Super Bowl every day, but it took its toll. It took its toll mentally with the way that you looked at things in life, which it can also be a positive, but it also took I used to say this guy behind me, I knew when he was bluffing, because when he had a real order, he would take my shoulder and he would shove it all the way into the ground. I'd be holding him up, but when he didn't have a real order, he wouldn't touch me. But all those times of being physically pushed and shoved and elbowed and everything, look at me. I mean, do I look like, I'm in the shape that I was when I was 25 or 30? No, it took its toll. Well, what caused me to leave the floor is simply electronic trading. I remember the day, there's this guy, Eddie Goldberg, that was on the floor, and he would make a market no matter what, 6 bid at 7, 7 bid at 8, 8 bid at 9, 9 bid at 10, all day long. And I'll never forget one time when we put the screens up around the ring, somebody said, hey, where's crude? And Eddie, for the first time, stopped, looked up at the screen and went, oh, wait a second. Oh, 7 bid at 8. And I knew at that point it was over. Okay. And, it was very quickly seen that on the risk reward that the market started moving so quickly. I remember my last trade. It was a terrible trade. I bought 50 lots. I sold 10 out for a quick 2-cent profit. And then I lost, I think, 40 cents on the next 40. Okay. Because there was literally it just gapped. And I was just like, you know what? I remember, I wrote it on my cards. I looked at everybody and go, yeah, I'm done. And, it just, I'm not ashamed to say I couldn't compete with the speed of the computers. Some of my fun memories of the trading floor, I got to tell you something. We used to call the trading floor, high school with money, right? I'm not sure if it was high school, kindergarten, grade school, whatever. But I remember one time somebody lost a bet. And this guy made me, let's just say he was a large individual. And they made him come in a Speedo and trade in a Speedo. Needless to say, that was just one of them. Or, you had everybody with the birthdays with the pies in the face and everything. And, it was a very interesting group of, guys and girls down there because it was truly a fraternity. And I think you bring up the fun times. And I think what you really find is that, the money was great. Don't get me wrong. But I think everybody misses the fraternity. Everybody misses the camaraderie. Everybody misses what it was like to know that even if you were enemies or not, everybody had your back.
Advantage Futures is proud to sponsor JLN Video Series.
Many include a recurring theme of people helping others during critical times in their trading careers.
Too often today, when traders need help the most, their call is met with numbers to press on the phone instead of an actual person.
Advantage prioritizes you.
Personalized service, competitive pricing, aimed at giving you every advantage.
Make us your advantage.
Advantage Futures.
It was awesome, and that's the problem where I think a lot of traders are still having is that it's like a rock star going on stage. It's like, an athlete hearing the roar of the crowd. You walked on into that floor. I mean, think about it. Let's look back in history. It was a 25,000 square foot trading floor. And by the way, the reason why Nymex was developed like the CME is because I went into the chairman's office of Nymex when we were rebuilding our building, and they were going to do flat floor. And I said, no, you have to do the tiering. And I made him, we got a jet, we put a whole board on it. We went out there, we took a tour of the CME, and we basically developed the CME's floor in New York, but with more, at the time it was more high tech, but simply because it was a newer building. But you walked on there, and you had the 40-foot ceilings, the 25,000 square feet, no columns. You could see, and there was perfect sight lines, and there was a pulse. And that feeling that when, your team, hits the home run in the ninth inning, or when you score the football, the touchdown in the last second, we had that multiple times a day. And it was interesting that when I stopped trading, I went through that what I would consider is a deep depression. And I finally sought help, and I spoke to somebody, and they finally looked at me then, and they said, you know what? You're going through withdrawal. And I go, what do you mean? I don't take drugs. And he goes, well, every time that you were screaming and yelling all day and either good or bad trades, you were having the dopamine rush that a drug would give. You would, it's like when you see that score and the hands go up and everybody's going wild in the stadium, that feel that you get? We had it all day long. Even when we got our ass kicked, we had it. And you know what? When I say it was like going to the Super Bowl every day, it was amazing. It was truly the bastion of capitalism at its best. And it really all depended on risk reward. Like, I said earlier, what you could make on the trading floor really had to do with a couple of things. One, your risk tolerance. I was a medium-sized trader. I remember the first time that I went buy them. And we all know as a trader, you never say buy them to a Goldman Sachs broker, okay? And he just looked at me. And he goes, sold 500. There were 500 spreads. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I was a 100-lot spread trader on a good day, okay? He's like, 500. Now, we had a rule on Nymex that you could say 10 because we didn't want to go none because that was, people didn't realize spoofing was been done for years because they did it to us all the time. But 500. So I looked at him and go, buy them. Well, I tell you, it never ticked in my favor once. And you've never seen somebody run around a ring so fast, going, sold, sold, sold. How many sold, 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 sold? Just get me off this. Okay, so, but that was my risk tolerance. But if I would take 50 lots, I would have been able to hold on to the trade, and then the trade would have come back my way. So being a risk manager at Sterling, I was able to see small traders make a nice living, medium traders like myself make a good living. And then I had guys that would make a couple of $100,000 in a night or lose a couple of $100,000 in a night and go out for dinner like nothing ever happened. Some of the best trading days ever was when the world was at its worst, or when they had the biggest problems. And that's what was such a paradox in our world. One of my best days trading was with Katrina, simply because, I came in, I had no position, and I was trading around, and, the market swings back then. First, it's like there was no issues with the oil wells. And then, so we come off, and then we found out that the tidal surge ripped out all the piping, underneath. Then we came up. So the market swings on those days leading up to Katrina, and after, that was one of my bigger days. And also during the Gulf War, we all had, very big days from the market movement. And then post September 11th, we had. So sadly, in the world of oil, our good days, in some respects, was based off of bad news on a global scale. And that's why every time that I'm on CNN or CNBC or Fox and they talk about crude oil is down, $3 today, it's a bad day for crude oil, I'm the guy that says, okay, but it's a good day for the world. It's an automatic tax cut. I'm trying to look on the other side of it, because I just think lower oil prices are good for everybody. I learned very quickly not to have one trading style. And there are people that just had one trading style. I was lucky enough to start in Chicago to see the ARB, right? I was on the phone, all day with the Swiss bank. So I saw the ARB style. So when it was, 6 bid of 4, just jump on it, take the trade, thank you very much. And then I went into COMEX, and it was more of a choppy trading style, in, you're out, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. And then I went to Nymex, where the market was a little bit more fluid and had a little bit more extensions on it. So I always believed that there were times that you had to adjust your trading style to the market itself. The people that when I risk managed and the people that I've seen that had that one trading style and I talk about this with mindset and everything that I do. If you're stuck on that one thing, you're done. So I was lucky enough to be, and also taught to be, always be light on your feet. So where I was a, first, second, third month spread trader, butterfly in and out, I really tried not to take positions overnight, simply because the running joke was that I could lose 11 out of 10 nights in a row. Okay. And there would be this guy, literally the largest crude oil trader, one of them in the world on the trading floor. And he shared, he was in my office, and he'd walk by my office and he'd stick his head in, David, are you long or short? And I'm like, well, I'm long 10. He goes, I'm long 300. Get out. Okay. Because he knew that if I stayed long and he stayed long, he was going to lose money the next day. So again, know what your styles are. I was a lousy overnight trader. I admit that. No foul, no harm. But I was a very good, quick trader, just to be on your toes and to get in and out. After 9/11, we weren't sure if the trading floor was still there, simply because when the buildings fell, the first building fell, we were running, and we don't know what happened after the second. So that night, we had Vinny called an emergency board meeting, and I remember Stu Smith and Richie Schaefer got an escort, and they walked from like 60th Street all the way down, saw that the building was up, walked up to 16 floors of the building, or 15 floors of the building. We found that the building existed, but all our electronics and everything was just crushed because it was all in the towers. So Vinny ends up calling another board meeting. We end up meeting at the Palace, what was then, I guess, the Hemsley, now the Palace Hotel. And we used that as our command center, but we put somebody in a car, literally in a car, and had him drive out to Chicago just in case we couldn't get up to work out a deal with maybe putting our symbols on your Globex platform as a backup. But it really wasn't our first choice, because as much as the CME board said, don't worry, we'll make sure you get all the products back, we all know once products migrate, it's a little bit tough, and there was a good reason for it to migrate. So, basically what happened after that is that Vinny got the board down there, and for about 4 or 5 days, we were on different tasks. He ran it like a military operation. He's on the roof with oil up to his ankles as they're trying to get the generators set up. And, we need to talk about the effort that was made by Nymex, and not only by Nymex, by on that Monday when we brought 1,000 people down by boat in the morning up the wall into the building to be the first exchange in the country to reopen after 9/11. The people of Nymex that could have been too scared to come down, the clerks, the staff, the traders, the ring reporters, everybody came down there, huddled together, and we got that place back open.
Advantage Futures is proud to sponsor this JLN video series. In many of the series videos, there are recurring themes of people being helped at critical times in their trading careers. Too often today, when traders need help the most, their call is met with numbers to press on the phone instead of an actual person. At Advantage, you are our priority. Everyone needs an edge or advantage when trading. Make us your advantage.